Greetings, YouTube. Well, sit back. This one's going to be a mite rambly. So I have an idea kicking around in my head, one I've never used, um, but it's been kicking around for a number of years now. So I thought I'd throw it out here for other people to use. And it is an after the bomb campaign concept. Now, After the Bomb is the Palladium post-apocalyptic game, which grew out of the TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. And it has flat out the best mutant animal creation rules ever written. There's balance problems everywhere, but they are so incredibly evocative. I read that book at least probably once a year just so I can play with character development ideas. And the game has spider goats. Spider goats. So, this is the basic layout. There is the Empire of Humanity, which is capital in Technoville, which is essentially Albany, New York. And it goes down to the coast. It is not on the island itself, Manhattan Island, but it goes down to the water. South of that, in northern New Jersey, is New Kennel, which is a vassal state of the Empire, which is new from the name. It's dogs loyal to the Empire. Southern Jersey is contested territory, and below that is the Carolingia, essentially the free-range democratic society of mostly mutant animals with a few mutant humans and whatnot thrown in there for them in the mix. And not surprisingly, the mutant animals and the pure strain humans are at war with each other, though they're not as pure strain as I'd like to think. That does something else. So you get the basic idea: humans, dogs, contested territory, animals. Yes, I understand that dogs are animals. So don't correct me on that one. So this is going to take place in the Carolingia, or whatever it's called, I think Carolingia or something like that. And the player characters are going to be a group of adventurers that have done quite a few contracts for the government. Things that maybe the government doesn't want on the books, or things that are kind of irregular, so they want to send a team in which they can have plausible deniability about. So it's going to be, governments are governments. And they have been just given a rush mission. It has been discovered that there is an old research facility in the contested territory, and they need the team to get in there, find out if this research is valid, and there should be samples of the research devices in place, they believe. Unfortunately, they think the Empire has already also got this information, so now it's a rush to get there, grab the stuff, get the data out of the system as you can, and if possible, destroy all evidence from behind you so that the humans cannot get it. So they rush in there, and it's a mission. You can make it as complex as you want to. Maybe there are patrols of neutral groups that are just hostile to the adventurers, or there are human patrols. They use a lot of robots and stuff, so maybe there's some robots that they can take out, hopefully before they send out a recall, a message to their human owners, masters, whatever. You get the point. So they get to the base. Maybe it's difficult to get into. They get in there and they find that this is in fact a research facility. It still has some defenses in place, say robotics, Fallout 4 turrets. If you've ever watched Fallout, you know what I'm talking about. So they have to get in there, maybe mutant rats, stuff like that. And they find a sealed room in which they discover the target of their research. And in there is the data bank, the computers. There are still some power left, so they can actually read things and get the data out. Unless the player characters have someone with a certain level of expert abilities, they probably have an expert with them, an NPC that was given to them. They discover that there is a researcher here who is long dead, and you find out that this researcher was wounded at the moment of the event happening, got to the base for the purposes of making sure that the stuff in here did not fall into the hands of the rioters and potential terrorists and such. And their mission must have succeeded, even though they succumbed to their wounds and they died here in place. The expert or the player character can figure out that this is a certain data. I actually prefer to use the expert because I want don't want the player characters to know what these devices do. That's kind of key. Um, so you're gonna have to finagle that so they can't figure out what it does, but they know that the devices are here and the data is present. So they get the data core out, and they know that there are 10 devices, and the devices are spherical, roughly the size of a basketball, and 9 of them are just sitting there on a test bench doing nothing. One of them has been wired into the computer to go off at a prearranged time if you set the timer up. And the reason for this is that the researcher was going to use that device to disable this base. So the player characters are immediately going to believe that this is some kind of a bomb. And they're not 100% wrong. So they grab the devices, and they're not light. Each one's going to weigh like 12 or 15 kilograms. So they're not light. So they're going to have to get these things shoving, like each person carrying a couple of them or something, and they're weighing themselves down, trying to rush out of here. And this is when you can actually have maybe a spotter tells you that the humans are coming, or some alarms they set up or something, but the humans are coming in and they need to get out. They find out there is a back exit, and they go through it. Maybe they find some gear along the way. Maybe they're able to turn on the defenses and turn it against the humans. That would be something useful that a player character could do. That say that these things are easier to crack than the code for the research. If there is no expert in the party, you say the code for the actual data is too hard for them to break, him or her to break. But the security is easier, so they can turn the security against the incoming humans. They get out of the base, and from what they do know from the information left by the researcher, they have to get a minimum of 5 kilometers away before that device goes off. A minimum. So they rush. They get out beyond the thing. The timer goes off. Dramatic. You know how it goes. Maybe there's a skirmish there because some of the humans have come around to flank and try to find out if there's another exit. So maybe there's more fighting going on. Maybe wounded. It's harder to get the devices out. You know, drama, adventure, conflict, that sort of thing. And then the device goes off. Now, if anyone is looking in that direction, what they will see is a completely, absolutely, perfectly mirrored dome appear. It is 10 kilometers in diameter, so you're 5 kilometers away, you're safe. It is flawlessly shaped. It is a sphere. It actually goes under the ground, but you can't tell that. You're on the surface. You're just going to see a dome. It only exists for that long. Just long enough for their eyes to perceive a mirrored sphere or dome, and then it's gone. And then all the wind rushes toward the center of the detonation. Like a hurricane, knocking over the player characters. Again, drama. Now the player characters are probably going to be intrigued by this, and they walk forward, and they move forward, depending how far they're out beyond the range they are, and discover that there now is a perfectly shaped hole. It is a hemisphere, perfectly shaped. Flawless. And in the bottom, because it's 5 kilometers deep, which is 3.1 miles, there's going to be probably magma and water rushing in from all these other places. So you got lava and magma coming in, and you got water rushing in, steam and rock and everything. And very shortly, this is going to be a new lake, because there's lots of both subterranean, there's probably rivers and streams that are coming through this. That's a big area. And it's just gone. And the player characters are now really terrified because they are carrying 9 of these things on their person. So they make it back. They give it to their bosses. Bosses are very happy. Jump forward X amount of time, let the player characters do other things, and they're finally called back and said, okay, we've now figured out what we want to do with these things. Here's one of them. Your mission is to disguise yourself as animal slaves, fake control collars. They look like the real thing. And if they use the pain feature, which all the collars have, they'll get a little electrical buzz to tell them you should be pretending you're in pain now. But there are no explosives in there. They can't hurt them because the real ones have pain generators and explosives in them. So if slaves try to escape or they try to attack, they just die. Doesn't have to be a powerful explosion to take someone's head off. So the player characters then have to sneak in, and if there isn't someone in the group that can pass for human, they will be given an NPC to be their keeper, the guy in charge of them, the person delivering them. And they've been told to go to a specific park and to place this device into one of the containers, the garbage containers or something like that. Maybe bury it in the ground, something so that no one's going to see it. Garbage is probably the easiest thing to do. Set the timer, and then again, they know the routine. Get 5 kilometers away before it goes off. And they've picked this particular spot because it will preserve the fusion power plant that the human empire of Manny possesses. Quite possibly the only fusion power plant that anybody knows about in North America. Maybe not the only one, but the only one that anybody knows about on the East Coast. And they want to preserve that for their use. And this device is going to cut the head off the snake. So the player characters, again, intrigue, think, sneaking into enemy territory, occupied France. You've got the model. You get in there, they place the device in there, they hit the switch that'll set the timer going off. A small tube pops out in front of them, hits the ground, and then the device goes off. The world goes very strange. Everybody has to roll to see if they're incredibly disoriented, dizzy. Can have to roll to see if they're puking their guts out. Some people can maybe pass out from this. And then it only lasts a second. The lingering physical effects last longer. And then everything's fine. Except for the fact all the alarms in the world are going off. Because suddenly something's different. The humans are panicking. A full minute later, all the collars go off. All the collars are now broadcasting a pain signal. The player characters know something's up. They can just take their collars off. But all the animal slaves in this place are writhing in agony. So the player characters have to do something about that immediately. That's their next mission. Find the generator, get the generator to stop the pain signal, maybe even find a remote that will neutralize the ability to explode or release the collar, which probably not. They're probably a physical lock, but maybe a code that will prevent it from going off. But take control so that they cannot detonate them. Turn the pain off, and then broadcast a message, rise up, kill! And then the animals, who outnumber the humans, can then I rise up in their pitched battle, conflict. You get it, what happened in France when the liberation happened, that kind of thing. Eventually, things will settle down. They will discover that there is still some power left in this place. Not as much power as there was, because they seem to actually be disconnected from the fusion plant. But there is power, because there are different buildings have solar, some have their own generators, some have windmills or something, turbines on the roofs. So there is some power to consolidate. There are still things like medical facilities. This was called Technoville, and it's high tech for this world, probably equivalent to the technology of 1990. So it's the really most high tech spot known in the of the East Coast of North America, with the human settlement. The animal settlement, Carolingia, or whatever it's called, is probably number 2. And player characters have to figure out what happened. Why do we suddenly we can't get a hold of, we try radio signals, we're getting nothing. Radio signals should be reaching places, and they're not. Why are they not? And then, after they go outside the 5-mile range, 5 kilometer rather, so the 10 kilometer area, they will discover something. They're in Australia. You see, those devices aren't bombs. They're jump gates. They're designed as reusable jump gates to be used in space for StarCraft. And they switch 2 locations with each other. You dial in where you want to be, activate the thing, and where you are and where that place is, exchange everything within that sphere, and you were instantaneously transported. The tube that fell out, is a note explaining what happened, what these devices are. The device that the player characters used has burnt itself out. It's now just an empty, dead husk. And a deep apology from their commanders because, well, they didn't want them to know what was happening. Their lives have been sacrificed for the greater good, and the Empire of Humanity is now crippled. Now, the leader of the Empire of Humanity, which is, I can't remember his name, but he's actually a mutant human. He's a superhero, essentially, or supervillain, I should say. And he had an escape plan. And when everything went to crap, he got into his escape pod, basically a one-person or spacecraft, hit the button and shot himself off to go to a pre-designated location, which was in the Appalachians. And the little rocket is going to try to get there. It's not going to make it. So he's going to drop somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Maybe he survives, maybe he doesn't. But he's out of the picture for the immediate future. You as the GM can decide if he makes it or not, what happens. Does he go off to start a new empire somewhere else? Because not only is he a superhero, but he's essentially immortal. He's been around since the war. So maybe he just decides, I'm going to go start another empire someplace else. But you still have factions of the empire here. There's going to be there will be examples of people that had been infiltrated here as resistance fighters, so they've made allies of the player characters. You're now going to have to deal with the fact that the player characters are now in Australia, but they have the most high-tech spot on probably the entire continent. Now, do they start new lives here, or do they try to get home, which is a very far away? It's in the east coast of America, and they are now in Australia. I would probably put it in the jungles just for fun. There's rainforests of Australia. That would be cool, I think. Not too far from the coast, maybe on the Gold Coast, so that they can get to the ocean if they need to. And of course, all the land that was in Australia is now in Albany, New York. Some very confused Australians who are harmless to and not going to be cooperative to whatever remnants there are of the empire left, particularly there are going to be forces of the humans in New Kennel and other places around New York, because that's 10 kilometers is a big area, but it's not the entire human empire. They also used, the animals also used another device to take out the Navy. So the Navy's gone, their capital's gone, the empire is crumbling. The animals have invaded New Kennel. There's chaos. They've come in from the coast to invade from the New York Island, from Staten Island, Manhattan Island. And they've come in from the north, in the New England area, like Massachusetts and stuff. So there's a three-pronged attack, and the humans are in absolute chaos. So that is a separate adventure, which is a separate thing going on. Player characters don't really know about that. I'm just kind of filling you guys in. So now the player characters have to figure out what they want to do. They're sitting on one of the most valuable things there is in the Australian continent. What do they do with it? How do they help the mutant animals here, some of whom have been slaves to the humans for generations? So there may be some conflicted loyalties here. Protecting, the human non-combatants, maybe they agree that the combatants have to be taken care of, but protecting non-combatants, because they've lived and raised with these people. So you could have some loyalties, cross loyalties going on as well. I don't think there's going to be a out and out, an animal going to say, I'm going to fight against the other animals in defense of the humans, but I'm going to defend this human from being slaughtered because this human I have known all their life, and they themselves are not bad, even though one or both of their parents might have been, that kind of thing. There may have been abolitionists among the humans, and these animals would know that kind of thing. So there you go. This is an idea I've never used for anything. It's just been kicking around inside my skull for years. I thought I'd throw it up here, and apparently I'm tired and getting hoarse. So tell me what you do with it. Am I completely off base? Have I made any sense today? Because I'm a little tired. You probably could tell. And so let's talk about what you would do with this setting idea I've given you, What do you think the player character should do? What would you do in their spot? Do you think I've screwed people? Is that really nasty to do to somebody, to completely throw everything, a wrench in everything, but still give them a really big prize? So they've got now a position probably of power and a lot of technology to play with. So yes, their lives have gone in a direction they didn't necessarily desire, but it wasn't all bad. So let's play with the idea of space drives after the bomb and what happens when you end up in Australia.